The pale light of dawn found Albert already leagues from stinking pork, his weary legs carrying him through dew-laden fields toward Long Farm. He had slipped away from the Order's camp while most of the brothers still lay in a drunken stupor, their celebration of the night's cleansing having lasted well into the early hours. Only a few hours of fitful sleep had been his respite from the horrors he had witnessed, yet exhaustion was a price he gladly paid for distance from that charnel house of zealotry. Every few minutes, he found himself glancing over his shoulder, searching the horizon for the telltale dust of pursuing horsemen. The logical part of his mind insisted that the Order's presence in stinking pork had been mere coincidence. They were too focused on their witch hunt to be pursuing a single fugitive from the south. Yet paranoia was a faithful companion to any man with secrets as dark as his, and Albert had learned to heed its whispers. The wooden amulet of Belthar bounced against his chest with each step, a constant reminder of his deception. He reached up to touch it, remembering the months of preparation that had gone into crafting this persona. The irony was not lost on him, a necromancer masquerading as a brother of the very order tasked with hunting down practitioners of forbidden magic. Yet what better hiding place than among those who would never suspect one of their own? His time in the archives of the House of Silence had served him well in this regard. While searching for texts on necromancy, he had also studied the writings and rituals of the Brotherhood of the Final Journey. Their practices, their prayers, their mannerisms, all had been committed to memory alongside the forbidden knowledge he truly sought. Even now he could recite the litany of peaceful passage as naturally as any true brother.
Knowledge is an armor best of all,
his old master had often said, though Albert doubted the man had intended those teachings to be used quite like this. The lingering mist clung to the fields like a funeral shroud, reminding Albert of the incense that filled the halls of the Brotherhood's monasteries during their dawn rituals. His time studying their ways had taught him much about the complex tapestry of religious orders, the houses, as they were known, that served the five gods. Each had its place, its purpose, its own interpretation of divine will. The Brotherhood of the Final Journey was but one thread in this vast weaving. Unlike the mighty Acturian Order or the prestigious House of the Morning Light that served Stratus himself, the brothers who walked in Belthar's shadow kept to the margins of society. Their work was essential yet unsung, dealing with death's inevitability rather than life's glories. Albert's lips curved in a bitter smile as he recalled the countless hours spent memorizing the hierarchies and relationships between the various houses. Some, like the warrior houses dedicated to Orion, wore their allegiance proudly, their military might an extension of their god's martial aspects. Others, particularly those dedicated to Vesfulia and Aviar, focused on healing and nurture. Then there were the secret orders, their very existence known only to a select few, operating in shadows far deeper than those cast by his own borrowed robes. The five gods, Stratos, Orion, Belthar, Aviaea, and Vesfulia, each had their servants, their sworn champions. Some houses served multiple deities, seeing divine wisdom in the interplay between different aspects of the pantheon. Others, like the Brotherhood of the Final Journey, dedicated themselves to a single god's teachings. This focused devotion often bred deeper understanding, but also isolation from the broader religious community. His research had revealed that the Brotherhood's origins stretched back to the early days of the Empire, though their role had evolved significantly over the millenniums. Initially, it is said they had been simple death priests, tending to the dying and ensuring proper burial rites. But as civilization spread and the Empire's influence grew, they had taken on additional duties, investigating unnatural deaths, hunting down practitioners of forbidden magic, serving as witnesses and advisors in matters of inheritance and execution. Their association with death made them feared and avoided by common folk, yet their services remained essential. Every village of significant size maintained connections with the Brotherhood, calling upon them to oversee funerals, investigate suspicious deaths, and ensure that the dead truly rested in peace. They were particularly valued in rural areas where official law enforcement was sparse, their authority in matters of death giving them de facto judicial powers in certain circumstances. What fascinated Albert most was how few actual practitioners of magic existed within their ranks. Most religious orders maintained at least a few mages among their numbers, particularly those dedicated to Stratos or Vesfulia. But the Brotherhood of the Final Journey relied more on ritual and tradition than magical power. Whether this was by choice or necessity remained unclear in the texts he had studied, though he had his suspicions. The wind carried the scent of freshly turned earth from nearby fields, and Albert found himself thinking of the graves in stinking pork. If the dead were fortunate, perhaps a brother of the Final Journey would be found among the Acturian knights, or arrive later, drawn by the scent of waste and charred flesh, to grant them their proper rights. It was one of the Brotherhood's strictest tenets. All deserved dignity in death, even those condemned by the Church's justice. This dedication to proper death rites made his own activities all the more ironic. The very magic he studied was anathema to everything the Brotherhood stood for. Yet here he was, wearing their robes, carrying their symbol, speaking their prayers. The deception ran deeper than mere disguise. It was a perversion of everything they held sacred. Yet what choice did he have? The Brotherhood's reputation and authority provided the perfect cover for his research. Who would suspect a brother of Belthar of practicing the very arts they were sworn to destroy? The risk was great, but so too was the potential reward. And if his studies proved fruitful, perhaps he could reshape the very understanding of death that the Brotherhood had maintained for centuries. The morning mist was beginning to burn away as Long Farm drew nearer, the sun's rays piercing through like divine judgment. Albert touched the wooden amulet once more, silently asking Belthar's forgiveness for his deception. Whether the god of death heard or cared, he couldn't say. But in his heart, he believed that true understanding of death's mysteries was worth any price, even his own soul. The sun climbed higher in the sky as he walked, its warmth doing little to dispel the chill that had settled in his bones after the night's events. The screams of the accused witch still echoed in his thoughts, mixing with the memory of Oraculus's penetrating stare. Had the menacing knight sensed something amiss? His questions during their prayer had carried weight beyond mere theological discourse. The lingering weight of that gaze clung to him like a shadow, and though he told himself there was no true suspicion, the uncertainty gnawed at him. His legs felt like lead after walking for over 12 hours, fatigue gnawing at every fiber of his being. Yet the lingering fear of pursuit, or worse, an accidental encounter with the Order's patrols, kept him moving forward, one weary step after another. A distant church bell tolled, pulling Albert from his dark reverie. The sound came from the direction of Long Farm, though the village itself remained hidden behind the rolling hills. He quickened his pace slightly, eager to reach civilization, yet mindful of the need to maintain the deliberate, dignified gait expected of a brother of Belthar. The role he had chosen was both burden and shield. The brothers of the Final Journey were not well loved. Their association with death and their duties in hunting down occult practices made them figures of fear and suspicion among common folk. Yet that very fear granted them a certain immunity from too much scrutiny. People preferred to avoid those who walked with death, and few would dare question a brother too closely about his business. Still, it was a precarious balance. The younger brothers of the Order typically traveled in pairs or small groups, particularly when investigating allegations of forbidden practices. A solitary young brother was unusual enough to raise eyebrows among those familiar with the Order's customs. Albert had prepared a story for such questions, a tale of his partner falling ill in a nearby town, of urgent business that couldn't wait for his recovery. But every lie added another strand to the web that might eventually entangle him. The sun had nearly reached its zenith when he crested a final hill and saw Long Farm spread out before him. The village was certainly larger than Stinking Pork, its buildings clustered around a big, ancient stone temple, whose sloping roof, once decorated with painted statues, reached toward heaven like fingers, pointing the way to salvation. Fields of wheat and barley surround the settlement, still covered by the remnants of winter's ice and snow. Soon, their golden expanse will be broken by occasional copses of trees as spring approaches. It looked peaceful, prosperous even, by the standards of this region. But Albert knew better than to trust the appearance of peace. Taking in the vista of Long Farm from the dusty road, a traveler might first mistake it for just another farming settlement dotting the endless steppes of Serbia. Yet as one drew closer, the stark silhouette of an ancient imperial temple rising above the beige-colored buildings spoke of grander times. The settlement sprawled across the flatlands, with only a modest hill rising to the north like a drowsy guardian. Fields of wheat and barley surrounded the town in a patchwork of white and brown, still partially frozen fields, stretching toward the horizon where they merged with the wild steppes. The air carried the mingled scents of fresh bread, smithy smoke, and sun-baked earth. At the heart of Long Farm lay a spacious market square, dominated by the weathered majesty of the imperial temple. The structure, though neglected, retained its dignified presence, a testament to the engineering of the old empire. Its classical colonnade, stained by centuries of rain and wind, still reached proudly toward the sky. Worn stone steps led to heavy bronze doors that had long since oxidized to a dusky green. The temple's warm, beige stones seemed to hold the memory of ancient prayers within its walls. As evening approached, the setting sun painted the temple's columns in deep amber, their long shadows stretching across the market square like fingers of the past reaching into the present. The site served as a daily reminder that Long Farm was more than just another settlement on the Serdian steppes. It was a place where the echoes of imperial grandeur still whispered among the rhythms of rural life. But, in this very moment, it was the Drakenat, the local ecclesiastical seat, that drew Albert's attention. The stone building stood just in the middle of the village, almost next to the temple, its weathered walls speaking of antiquity that predated most of the surrounding structures. This would be his destination, his chance to establish himself in a position that would grant him both protection and resources. As he descended toward the village, Albert forced himself to focus on the immediate challenges ahead rather than the broader implications of his choices. The weight of his traveling pack, with its hidden compartment containing the forbidden scrolls, seemed to grow heavier with each step. He touched the amulet once more, a gesture that had become almost reflexive, and whispered a quiet prayer to Belthar. The words were genuine, if not in the way the true faithful would understand them. After all, who better to appreciate the mysteries of death than one who sought to master them? The first villagers were already eyeing him with the usual mixture of fear and respect as he approached. Albert adopted the serenely stern expression he had practiced countless times. Each step now was measured, deliberate, his bearing that of a man who walked comfortably in death's shadow. The deception that had begun in desperate flight had become as natural as breathing. The temple bell tolled again, marking the hour, and Albert allowed himself a small, grim smile. It is time to add another chapter.
To my carefully constructed fiction.